Yep. Inside, I want to kill myself. We are on an 0-7 run over the last 2 days. After tonight was just complete bullshit. So that's how I'm going to start off this show. Horrible Sunday, 1-5. I don't even know what to tell you about that. I just don't want to do this anymore. I have never seen anything like this, man. With the slump continuing, 2 straight losses, not a good day at all. 0-4. I just have not had a good season, man. What kind of slump that I'm on? The slump continues. I've reached a new peak, actually. I'm going to burn my Bruins hat, man. I don't know what is going on with the Bruins. March 8th, is that what it is? I don't even know. It's March 9th, I think. Who even knows, man? I don't know what day it is anymore. I don't even know what day it is anymore, man. Back with you after the worst day that I could possibly have. Back with you, as I always am. Until I die, at least. 0-2 yesterday, and yesterday did not go well for me. 0-5. The worst month that I've ever had in my 18 years doing this. I don't know what to even tell you about this anymore. Broke the slump yesterday as the slump just continues. The slump continues. Somebody fucking kill me, please. I don't even know what I should do at this point other than potentially end it all. What's up, everybody? It's Toad back with you. Better Off Dead Tuesday. What is it? I'm like October? Wait, no. November 4th. Losing day on the show yesterday. It was 1-1. It would have been a winning day with 1-1 if we flipped the 2 bets, which it looked like might happen. We got the win on the underdog out of the 2, though. St. Louis Blues with a win. They came back from down 2-0. I didn't look at the actual stats in the game yet, but they wound up winning the game outright, I believe, in overtime. So we got the win on that one. I'm happy about that, obviously. And then the Denver Nuggets just never got up by enough of a margin, although they were up 13 with like 2 minutes left. So it looked like they might be able to cover the 11.5 at that point. And no, they did not. They wound up only winning by 6. There were just a couple of basically garbage scores at the end of the game against them because they were still winning by, I think, 9 or 11 in the final minute. And then they just, I don't know, they didn't score again because they didn't need to. I'm not happy about that, obviously. I thought they would run away with the game, and it looked like there were a couple of different points where they might be able to do that, and they just never did. My NBA was way off yesterday, but I did only have that one play, and it had a shot to win. So, yeah, I mean, laying these big favorites, it's not that much of an issue in the NBA, but that one was not good. Jeffrey, what's up, man? I don't want to talk about the other big favorite, the Boston Celtics, either. Let's just get into today, man. We're gonna have college basketball again, but I don't have a whole lot to say about college basketball. We're gonna have NBA. I have one NBA play. I'm gonna have 2 hockey plays. Hockey, there's like basically a full hockey board here, and then there is college football as Tuesday MACtion begins. I'll give out an opinion on each of those games, but they're not very strong opinions. Staying away from the NBA last night, yeah, I mean, luckily I only had the one play there, and it was a game that my read wasn't totally off on, but I was off on a lot of those games last night. That was not good. Bulls, I'll talk about that game. That's Bulls Sixers, I think. I'll talk about that in a minute. College basketball, I'm just going to get into it and probably talk about this really quickly because, again, this is similar to yesterday where these teams are playing their first game of the season. So it's really kind of a roll of the dice as far as like what you think these teams are going to look like, what they're going to do this year, because so many teams with the modern college basketball, so many teams just completely rebuild. And yesterday, there were some interesting games like Winthrop. I think I was completely wrong about in that early game where Winthrop wound up covering, but they were going to lose that game, dude. They were, I believe they were ahead early in the game, and then they were not way behind, but they were behind late in the game. So I was like, there's no way they're going to cover as a favorite. And then wound up covering by that exact 7, the key threshold there, the key number, probably because of intentional fouls at the end of the game. So I think if you had Winthrop in that game, you got really, really lucky. And the line actually tanked down to like 3.5. So I guess that made it a little bit easier to cover if you did have that. But I think Winthrop was the wrong side in that game. My my very quick read on that game was not right. Looking at some of the other games yesterday real quick, actually, it was like, my read was correct on both of the big games. I was correct about Arizona. They won outright against Florida because I thought Florida would just be a little bit overvalued coming off being the champion, obviously, and having a lot of turnover. They're a stacked team, though, still. But Arizona, even though Arizona had a lot of turnover, too, Arizona came to play, man. They played well. They had a big crowd in Vegas. The crowd was definitely biased towards Arizona, which I did think would be the case. So that happened. And then I want to be correct on Villanova. They were able to kind of sneak in the back door against BYU. The crowd was, which I forgot to mention, the crowd was actually more BYU heavy there because it was in Vegas again. So that makes sense that the crowd was more, just crowd favored BYU, obviously. A bunch of BYU fans showed up for that. Villanova basically did what I thought they would do, though, and they slowed the game down. BYU had like a double-digit lead early, but they could never really get enough separation to really be in a good position to necessarily cover that thing. And Villanova had a good second half, and they actually took the lead. Villanova was winning that game by 2, I think, with like 3 minutes left. I had it on, and then they kind of fell apart, and BYU wound up swinging it back to like 7. I think the number when the game went off, I think it was 8.5 on BYU or something like that. So Villanova was able to cover that. They covered every number, though. They wound up only losing by 5. Not really a whole lot else to see on the board yesterday. There were a few weird ones, though, where like Auburn, you kind of had to expect that Auburn would not get off to like a really, really great start because they were really, really good last year. They made the Final Four, of course. They were the best team for a large portion of the regular season last year. But then, of course, Bruce Pearl stepped down and he ceded the reins to his son, Stephen Pearl. So Stephen Pearl is the coach there now. Bruce Pearl is now on the panel on TNT, as TNT is now covering regular season college basketball for the first time. I don't mind it. I kind of like Bruce Pearl as an analyst. I don't like that he's like extremely pro-Israel, but he's on the conservative side of the aisle, I think, politically, but he's a neocon. He is funny, though. I think he's funny. But his son not getting off to a good start there, as they had to go to overtime to beat Bethune-Cookman, and I think that was a home game for Auburn as well. So not great. Bethune-Cookman, I guess, is like one of the better teams in the SWAC, but it's still the SWAC. It's D1, but it's not a very good D1 conference. It's one of the worst. Auburn really got tested there, taken to the limit as, I assume, like well over a 20-point favorite, probably about a 28-point favorite, I would imagine, in this game. 24.5. I was a little bit off on that. But yeah, so maybe look to fade Bethune-Cookman in their next game, or maybe play on Auburn in their next game, depending on how that sets up. But that was one of the weirder results yesterday. We also did have whoever Maryland Eastern Shore played also like took whoever their opponent was in overtime. But I was going to finish my thought. When a team transitions to a new coach like Auburn did, and they also lost like a bunch of their best players from last year. Like, I think their top 2 or 3 players are all gone. So, that's a huge amount of turnover, and you're transitioning to a new system or whatever. Although I assume, Pearl probably is kind of continuing the system that his father created, but still, you got to expect growing pains there when something like that happens. So, that's a situation where, there's no way I would have laid the points with Auburn in that game at the very least. You can kind of explain what happened there. Pinsy, what's up, man? Thanks for coming back. Maryland Eastern Shore was another weird one last night. Where is that? That was against Georgia Tech. That was just an insanely low-scoring game. It was like, I think 46-46 at the end of regulation. Georgia Tech escaped with a win. They were a 28.5-point underdog when the game went off. It was a very low total, 139.5. Not really a game where you want to lay a massive amount of points like that. Although Maryland Eastern Shore, they're a bad team, dude. Like, they're in the MEAC, I think, which is one of the MEAC and the SWAC are the 2 worst conferences in Division I. And Maryland Eastern Shore, I don't think they're a very good MEAC team either. But Georgia Tech, I didn't see the game, but it looks like they just didn't even show up. And then they at least finally did enough to win in overtime. But that is just a crazy low-scoring game. That's a low-scoring game even for regulation, and that was 56-52 was the final score with overtime. Oh, man. Yeah, just I don't know what happened in that game, but you get these just odd results early in the season, man. Not that Georgia Tech is a very good big conference school though, but they are still an ACC team, so that was one of the weirder results yesterday. And then we did have one upset, which we don't even know how big of an upset it was, unless you can correct me if you can correct me if I'm missing some other upsets here. But the only like big upset that I saw was Boise State losing at home, which I think Georgia Tech was also at home, by the way. This just made no sense. Boise State lost to Division II Hawaii Pacific, which ESPN doesn't even have a page for them. They list them as the Sea Warriors, but I saw Hawaii Pacific tweet out. They tweeted out about this win, and they're actually the Sharks. They're not the Sea Warriors. I don't fucking know, man. I don't know how this happened. There wasn't even a line on this game, so we don't even know how big of an upset this was. But Boise is like one of the top 3 or 4 teams in the Mountain West this year. At least that's what they're projected to be. They brought back Goggle Dude, Andrew Meadow or whatever. I like him. Somehow Boise they lost the game outright. I mean, what else can you say? Just a bad performance. Maybe they just thought it would be easy. I mean, who knows? Just again, weird results early on. I mean, you don't want to put too much like stock into this, right? It's just one result. Like it's just a weird game, probably like a huge outlier, but it was just crazy that this happened. Probably the biggest upset of the year, but and it might just stay that way, but we just don't know how big of a favorite Boise would have really been. I mean, Ken Baum has them as like a top 50 or so team in Division I, and they're up against a Division II team, although some of these D2 teams are better than the worst like D1 teams, but even so, you got to think that's like at least about like a 30-point upset in that one. I mean, that's just insane. So I just figured I would point that out. I don't do Division II basketball, though, so like I don't think there probably won't even be a line on Hawaii Pacific's next game, although you might want to look to play on Boise State in their next game, depending on who they play next. But that was basically it for anything interesting that happened yesterday as far as I saw. So, yeah, I figured I would just point some of those things out. Not a whole lot else of interest, I don't think, yesterday on the board. I mean, we just... it was a huge college basketball board, so it's hard to pay attention to everything, especially while you have other sports going on. But back to today. Let's go to today again. I don't want this video to be too long this morning, although college basketball is not all day today. It's only in the evening. There's not a whole lot going on. I mean, you got some of the other better teams playing. Purdue is playing. They're the number 1 ranked team, but they get Evansville. I mean, it is an in-state little brother situation with Evansville, but Purdue is going to be a massive favorite in this game. 35.5, so, whatever. I mean, it's not a game that I would have any interest in, really, as far as betting is concerned. Kentucky, one of the teams that's supposed to be completely on the rise here, gets Nichols today. I'm not even sure where Nichols is, to be honest. I want to say they're in Texas. They're in the Southland Conference. Kentucky over 30-point favorite as well. Just pointing out some of the other ranked teams that are getting involved today. Texas Tech will have their opener today against Lindenwood, who's in the Ohio Valley, I believe. Texas Tech, a massive favorite. 34.5. Lindenwood, not very good. And that's it for ranked teams, except the one big game on ESPN tonight at 8:45 Eastern is Texas and Duke. So you get one big game. And I think it's actually a good thing for these better teams to not play all cupcakes early on. This is sort of like the Tom Izzo Michigan State approach. Like, he believes in battle testing his team, you know what I mean? Like, you're going to take some losses early on. That's why Michigan State seems to always be underrated and under the radar, because he purposely schedules like really good teams in the out-of-conference slate early in the season to battle test his team. And then by the time they have to play a bunch of good teams in conference and, getting into the tournament, whatever. That's why it seems like Michigan State tends to like overperform. It's for that reason, because they get battle tested. So some of these teams seem like they're doing that at the beginning of this year. At least yesterday and tonight, we had a few of the bigger teams played other good teams, obviously, especially Arizona and Florida last night. Now Duke against Texas. Duke's the 6th ranked team in the country. Texas unranked, but Texas, Ken Baum's got them somewhere around like 30th in the country, I think. 39th, actually. Texas, at least based on what they did last year, they were more of a defensive team. Duke, good on both sides of the ball. Duke played a really, really slow pace last year, which I think Texas also, kind of tends to do that. So Duke was just better at it. So that's kind of that's not really good for Texas because they can't really like throw Duke out of their preferred pace here. Duke is about a 9.5-point favorite in this one. This is actually a semi-home game for Duke because it's not at Duke's home. It's in Charlotte, North Carolina. I believe it's at the Hornets Arena in Charlotte. So obviously there'll be a huge Duke crowd there anyway. It's just not at their home arena on campus. So it's a semi-home game. But Duke's going to basically get lined like they are at home pretty much. They're up from a 7.5-point favorite to a 9.5-point favorite. 73% of the tickets, 97% of the cash on them. Looks like the money is coming in on Duke. I mean, both of these teams are going through turnover this year like everyone is. But Duke, I mean, you lose Cooper Flagg and Con Knipple. I mean, that's a huge amount of turnover here. I know Duke's Duke, and they're just going to reload. But in the first game of the season, I don't really know that's going to... I don't know that they're really going to be like this great powerhouse again in the first game of the season with all new faces here. Although I know Texas is going to have new faces as well. But, I mean, value-wise, I think there's got to be maybe some value in taking the points with Texas in this one. I mean, obviously I don't want to do it, but I think that's probably the way that I would lean, just fading these teams that – because you're going to have to get value on that because everybody loves Duke. Duke is the huge name. I mean, not everybody loves Duke, but the recreational bettors like to bet Duke. You know what I mean? Because they want to win money, even if they hate Duke, which I am certainly not a Duke fan. So maybe I don't know if my bias is coming into play at all here, but I think it's pretty obvious that Duke is going to have the line kind of skewed in their direction just because they are Duke and because of what they've done the last couple of seasons, whereas Texas has not looked good the last couple of seasons. So that's like the big game of the night. Not much else going on really tonight as far as college basketball. Let's go to NHL here where I will have one play in the NHL. I always forget to throw up, but this is the breakdown, man. I always forget to throw that up on the board there. NHL. I don't know if I want to talk about every single one of these games, which I always say, and I wind up talking about at least most of them. But there's a fairly big NHL board here. I'm going to have two plays in the NHL. Utah and Buffalo is like somewhat interesting just because there are some situational angles here. But Utah's coming off 2 losses in a row, but they're in kind of a weird spot because they were just in a home game that was sandwiched in between 2 road trips, which I tend to look to fade a team in a spot like that because I think it actually exacerbates the return home spot. And Utah lost to Tampa Bay in that spot. They were returning home from a road trip, or they were on the road for more than a week. And that's bad enough because you tend to get a little bit distracted because you have to get stuff done at home because you've been away from home for a while. But to have to go back out on the road almost immediately, you have to get that stuff done at home that you need to get done because you have almost no time to do it. So it's a very, very strange spot that doesn't show up that often. Maybe I should have given out Tampa as a play in that one. I forget what the situation was for Tampa in that one, but Tampa beat Utah. So now Utah is on a 2-game losing streak. And also Utah was in an even worse spot there because they had played a big game to finish the road trip against Edmonton. And that was their first loss since their opening couple of games or their first 3 games. So Utah lost a long win streak, and sometimes that hangs you over too. So yeah, I probably should have given out Tampa in that game. Utah is starting a road trip here, and sometimes it is a positive spot. When you lose at home, one of the better things to do is just get the hell out of there and just focus on hockey. So maybe Utah will be focused here to try to get the road trip off on the right foot after losing a couple games in a row. Buffalo likely will be focused as well, but Buffalo's coming off a big win over Washington in a shootout, so they could be in a little bit of a hangover spot. I mean, I don't think they're necessarily going to overlook Utah, and they do have some rest because they haven't played since Saturday, but could be a little bit of a letdown coming off that game against Washington. And Buffalo will have Lyon back in net here, so they will have their better goalie. They did end a losing streak, so that will at least give them some momentum. They've also played 4 overtime games in a row, which that's something that can kind of take its toll as well. I would lean to Utah in this one. Utah is up from -115 to -126 on the money line, although they're public with 73% of tickets, which I'm not surprised by. But 88% of the cash right now looks like it's on the Buffalo side, which I just don't understand that. Yeah, I mean, I don't see that great of an angle for Buffalo in that one, to be honest, other than, like Utah, just maybe they're overvalued because they're a favorite on the road, basically. Maybe they just shouldn't be a favorite of that magnitude on the road. Maybe Utah isn't quite as good as their record looks right now. I could see those arguments, but for the situation, I think it sets up a little bit better for Utah. Philadelphia at Montreal. Montreal on a 3-game win streak here. They're off to a nice start at 9-3. 2 straight overtime wins. They've had a few days off now. They're staying at home because they actually won in a return home spot, which I'm not happy about because I gave out Ottawa in that game, and they lost in overtime. And there were all these stats that I gave out on Montembeault. Just Montembeault's really been struggling this year. I don't know if it's going to be him back in net or not because of his struggles, Montreal's actually used Dobes more often, so it might be him again here. But Montreal is rested, and this is their 2nd game back home. But it's a big win when they beat Ottawa, man, because that's sort of like a Canadian, like almost a geographic rivalry. Now they get the Flyers, who aren't really that good, and they do have to play New Jersey next, and New Jersey's off to a really nice start. So it is possible they kind of overlook Philadelphia here. Philadelphia is coming off an ugly loss to Calgary. And again, one of the best things you could do if you lose like that, especially at home, is to just fuck it and just go out on the road. Philadelphia used Kolosov in net in that one because I guess, as you guys told me, Urson is hurt. But Vladar is their top goalie, so it will be Vladar back in net this time. Kolosov wasn't exactly bad in that game against Calgary. The Flyers' offense was really bad in the game. But again, I think Flyers will be focused here. They get to go out on the road, face Montreal. I like the spot better for Philadelphia in that one. That's the way that I would lean. Montreal up a little bit on the money line from -155 to -157. 58% of the tickets and 60% of the cash on Philadelphia, which I don't even know if I buy that Philadelphia would be a public underdog here. I mean, Montreal, better record. Seems like they would pretty much wind up being the public side. I think some of the actual money bets are coming in on Philadelphia there, and I'm not going to disagree with it. I think the spot is okay for Philadelphia there. I'm almost tempted to give that out, actually, at this point. Let me see here. Yeah, I mean, the extra days off from Montreal might not actually help them because when you're on a 3-game win streak, you don't want to have that many days off. It's like a bye in football where it can kind of like hurt your momentum. I'm considering it here. New Jersey is their next opponent. They're at 9-4. New Jersey, yeah, really off to a good start right now. The win over Ottawa was pretty big. I'm tempted. Yeah, I kind of like how this sets up for Philadelphia, to be honest, man. Yeah, let's do it. Let's add a third hockey play. Let's get really, really fucking stupid here. Jeffrey might like that because I think he's a Philly fan. I got no bias in it, man. I mean, I'm anti-Philly, but I like money. So where are they at here? I can't even find them. Yeah, let's do it. You can get Philly at +138 on the money line too. You know what? Take a flyer on it. How about that? Yeah. And when you take an underdog, at a price like this, I mean, if you want to do like one of those split bets, you'll have to pay a little bit more for it. But you could do a split bet that's partially on the +1.5 puck line and partially on the money line. I'm just going to go Philadelphia money line on this at +138. I mean, the line is close to basically you're going to just make it a pick the winner pretty much. But when you're playing an underdog like that, you don't even need 50% of them to win. You only need like a high 40-something% of them to win to actually profit on those. So I kind of like doing that, man. I like these underdogs that I think are in good spots. So Philadelphia, I'll add a play on them here. Why not? Yeah. All right. But yeah, if you want to do the split bet with the +1.5 puck line and part of it on the money line, you could do that as well. I don't know. Maybe I have to consider doing it that way because it's a little bit. I mean, I guess you have to put more money at stake, but it's obviously more likely that you'll at least push the bet. So I don't know. I don't know how else to describe it, but I do like these money line underdogs to just go all out, just fire on the money line. As long as you're like, once it gets into a bigger underdog range, I'll start looking towards like, yeah, you want to do like a split bet on the puck line. But yeah, for this one, I think it makes sense to just fire on the money line. And again, like long term, you're not even saying you think they're going to win the game necessarily. You're just saying you think they have a better chance to win the game than what the odds are. So that's an early best bet. Bruins and Islanders, I'm going to give out a play on that one, and on Carolina and Rangers, so I'll avoid those for now. Edmonton and Dallas is basically the big game of the night. Edmonton off to kind of an iffy start at 6-5-3. Could be maybe that Stanley Cup final hangover or curse or whatever you want to call it again. Although, of course, Edmonton did make the finals again last year after making the finals the previous year. But I think they did start off a little bit slow last year as well. Edmonton's coming off an ugly loss to St. Louis, which, of course, that was the game I got right yesterday because I thought Edmonton was going to be looking ahead to this game, playing the back-to-back here. So Edmonton took the loss. Yes, they're on a back-to-back, but the back-to-back isn't as bad because they're going to have Skinner back in net this time. So, as I said, they were going to use Pickard yesterday because they want to use a better goalie for the Dallas game, which is what they're doing. So they're going to be more focused on this Dallas game for sure. It is still a back-to-back, and it is still a third game in 4 days, though, for Edmonton. But they will have the rested goalie here, and they're coming off kind of a bad loss yesterday, so it's not all bad for them. But I do still kind of like Dallas in this spot. Dallas obviously has more rest. They haven't played since Saturday, and they lost that game, although it was on the road. They lost both their games on the road trip in Florida to Tampa Bay and Florida. Both games went into overtime. They did use DeSmith in their last game, so Ottinger has had a lot of time off. Ottinger will be back in net here unless he's hurt or something, which I doubt. So you're going to get both starting goalies here. Ottinger is the better of the two goalies. So he will be back in net for Dallas here. Yes, technically Dallas is returning home from a road trip, which I typically don't like. They've been on the road. They went on the road last Thursday, but it was less than a week away from home. They only went to Florida for 2 games, so I'm not really too concerned about that. The concern with the return home, obviously, a lot of it is that they're going to be distracted, but you're not going to be distracted when it's Edmonton, man. And even less so here because this is Dallas's playoff revenge spot here, man, because Edmonton eliminated Dallas from the playoffs last year. So that's why I liked Florida against Dallas. I think I might have given that out as a play, if I'm not mistaken. On Saturday, Florida got the win over Dallas. I think Dallas was probably looking ahead to this one. Dallas had their worst goalie in net there with DeSmith in that one. You know this game, Dallas has had this game circled all season, man. This is the first time they're facing Edmonton since they got eliminated by Edmonton from the playoffs. Dallas is going to go all out in this game. And the fact that they've had multiple days off, I think, is also going to help break that little bit of losing momentum that they had here. So I do like Dallas better in this one. The money seems to be agreeing with that, even though the line initially dropped from -131 to -123 on Dallas. So it's basically in the range where they're just getting home ice. So the odds makers are kind of telling you these teams are basically even, and it's basically just like you decide which team here. Edmonton, 67% of the tickets, though. The public, they still like Edmonton. They like the offense. They like McDavid, but 64% of the cash as of now on Dallas. So I will agree with that market read. I agree with Dallas. There are some aspects of that handicap that, of the situation that I don't totally love, but that's the way that I'll go there. Nashville and Minnesota here. Minnesota, they're coming up beating Vancouver, and they've had a couple of days off since then, but that did break a long loss streak for Minnesota. They had lost 5 games in a row, so sometimes when you break a loss streak like that, it will help propel you forward, although they do have Carolina up next, so I don't know if Carolina is going to be a bit of a look ahead here because Carolina is really good. Nashville isn't, so it is possible Minnesota kind of still overlooks Nashville here. Nashville, they actually just lost to that same Vancouver team yesterday. So, the public is going to take a look at this and probably have that thought, the transitive property, looking at that common opponent that both teams just faced. Oh, well, Minnesota just easily beat Vancouver, and Vancouver just beat Nashville. So this is really easy, right? That means Minnesota's obviously going to beat Nashville here. I wouldn't say that necessarily, although Nashville is still on the back-to-back, which I don't really love. It's a one-game road trip, which, again, I don't really love that either. Although sometimes it's good to just get out of home after you lose and just go out and focus on that one game on the road. But it is still travel. It is still a back-to-back. Saros played yesterday for Nashville, so it might actually mean they have their lesser goalie in net here, a Noonan, which I don't really love that either. Nashville has kind of burned me too many times, too, so I can't get there with this one, but I do think the spot is a little bit better for Nashville here, so I would lean that way. The money seems to be agreeing with that, dropping Minnesota from minus 223 to minus 205. 94% of the tickets, 70% of the cash. So less of the cash on Minnesota. Reverse line movement against them. Nashville, I'd look towards them on the puck line in that game if I was going to look at that game. Yeah, I mean, as a big underdog, that's what makes sense there. Tampa at Colorado. I guess I am just going to talk about every one of these games, try to go through it lightning fast, pun intended. Tampa, I mean, they've turned things around, man, after they were 1-4-2 to start the season. I told you they were not as bad as that. Tampa's looking pretty good right now. They've won 5 games in a row, including wins over Vegas, Dallas, Utah. Some pretty big wins in there. Coming off that win over Utah, now they're on that spot where they have to play the high elevation, like the 2 high elevation games, basically. The high elevation trips. They have to play Utah, which they won. And I pointed out Utah was in a really bad spot. I think the reason why I didn't want Tampa in that game was because Tampa was off of beating Dallas, which was also a huge win. So I think that's what kind of kept me away from Tampa in that one. Tampa got the win again. It's tough to go into both Utah and Colorado and win both games, man. Although I guess you could argue Tampa will be adjusted to the high elevation now. But still, it's going to be a difficult spot. They're going to be focused because it is Colorado, and every team is basically going to focus on Colorado. Colorado only has 1 regulation loss this year, 4 overtime losses. And Colorado, they're in a spot where they're likely to be focused as well because, and they also have a lot of rest surrounding this game, but they're coming off a loss to San Jose in overtime, which I said I liked San Jose in that game. I thought it was a bad spot for Colorado, coming off beating New Jersey in revenge, beating Vegas. Then they also were on a back-to-back, so they put in Blackwood in net, not to be confused with Wedgwood, and it was Blackwood's first start of the season, so it was not a very good spot for Colorado. They lost to that bad Shark team in overtime. That was Saturday, so now they've had a lot of days off. Yes, they're returning home, but it was only a 2-game road trip, so I think whatever they needed to get done at home, which might not have been much, I think they already got done. I think they're going to be focused after an ugly loss like that. They do have Edmonton up next, so you do have to worry about the potential look ahead here a little bit, although Edmonton is not for multiple days after this, so you might not have to worry about it that much. It's not a playoff revenge scenario, I don't think, either, because I think Colorado's their playoff revenge will be Dallas, which actually they had an opportunity to do that already, and they lost in overtime, so they're still going to be looking at Dallas whenever they play them again. So Edmonton is still going to be a big game for them, but because they have a bunch of rest, I think they are going to be focused on this Tampa game. Wedgwood almost certainly will be back in net for Colorado here at least, so they have their better goalie back in net. So it sets up fairly decently for Colorado here. So I already looked at Tampa's the spot for Tampa there. I would lean to Colorado in this game. Colorado money line makes sense to me in this game. If you want to try to drop the price, you could go Colorado in regulation because I don't know how many of their overtime games have wound up being wins, though. Like, I mean, the worry about that is that Colorado does seem to go into overtime a lot, although they have a lot of overtime losses. They're up from minus 140 to minus 143 on the money line. 67% of the tickets on Tampa. So Tampa's actually getting some public action here, which seems strange to me. I guess just because Tampa's been really hot recently. Colorado still has the better record, though, so it kind of surprises me. But Colorado, 51% of the cash. I lean that way as well, agreeing with the market in that one on Colorado. Detroit at Vegas. The odds makers are telling you something here because Detroit has a pretty good record so far this year. But the odds makers are telling you that even though Detroit's 9-4, Vegas, what are they at? Vegas is only 6-2-3, but the odds makers are telling you Vegas is the better team as they're up from minus 180 to minus 189 on the money line. So it's one of those lines that kind of makes you pause and look at it and think, oh, interesting that the team with the worst record is a fairly heavy favorite here. So the odds makers are telling you Vegas is the substantially better team. However, Vegas has 59% of the tickets, it looks like, and 72% of the cash coming in on Detroit. So interesting. It looks like the market read, as far as the money is concerned, looks like it's leaning towards Detroit. Detroit just beat San Jose. I mean, that's just a win that will just kind of give you a little bit of momentum moving forward. Detroit is finishing a road trip, though, so it's not exactly the easiest spot for them. Fifth straight road game, and they've won three of the four, so they've already won the road trip, although I'm not going to say that they're going to not show up for a game against Vegas, though. I mean, I think they will. And Vegas is a big opponent, so I'm not really too concerned about Detroit, like, not having any motivation here or anything like that. Vegas is coming off a tough loss at home against Colorado. That was a return home spot for Vegas, where they went out to the East Coast, to Florida, Tampa, Carolina, had a difficult road trip there, came back home, didn't play well in the return home spot, which is expected, again, because the return home, difficult spot, although they were away for less than a week. But sometimes you get those distractions, they just come into play, man, even if you are playing a good team. They've had a bunch of days off now since then, though, so the spot doesn't line up too terribly for Vegas here. Do I agree with the market, though, with the lean towards Detroit? I don't know. I mean, it's a positive spot for Vegas because it's a second straight game back home, and usually when you lose that first game back home, especially when you have some rest there, you can get stuff out of the way at home. You wind up focusing on that next game. So I think it's a positive spot for them. I think the spot's a little bit better for Vegas, to be honest, even though Detroit could be kind of shocked back into focus because they almost lost to San Jose in their last game, but they have less rest. They've been traveling a lot. I don't really necessarily love how that sets up for Detroit. So I actually think Vegas is in the slightly better spot, in my opinion. So I would somewhat disagree with the market in that one. Although if you want to play Vegas, you probably have to go Vegas to win in regulation or something like that to try to get the price down, which again is a little bit risky in hockey. But again, you get a way better price on it for a reason. Florida at Anaheim. Florida playing a little bit better recently, I guess. I mean, they've won 3 out of their last 5 at least. They just beat Dallas, so they could be in a letdown spot. That was a big win over Dallas, and I pointed out that was not a very good spot for Dallas. Huge win for Florida, really. Now they're playing Anaheim, so you could argue it's going to be a letdown spot. But it is the first game of a road trip, and sometimes you do focus when you go out on the road because you want to kick it off on the right foot. And the other thing that I would hesitate with about fading Florida here is that they just lost to Anaheim at home the game before the Dallas game. That was a terrible spot for Florida, where I'm pretty sure I gave out Anaheim in that game. And Florida had their second-string goalie in net in that game with Tarasov because Bobrovsky is obviously their better goalie. I would imagine it will be Bobrovsky in this one because Bobrovsky has had multiple days to rest here. So Florida got caught. They lost to Anaheim at home in a sandwich spot between Vegas and Dallas with their backup goalie in net. So I do think Florida will potentially be focused here just because it's one of those quick revenge spots where they want to go out to Anaheim and just repay the favor and deal them a loss on their own ice. Anaheim's off to a 7-3-1 start, and that's just, honestly, it's a joke. Anaheim is not as good as that record makes them look. Anaheim's also, I mean, I don't want to say they're necessarily a letdown spot, but they did just reel off wins against Florida, then Detroit, despite it being a return home spot. Then they won again against New Jersey. They've won 5 of their last 6 games. Yeah, they'll be focused on Florida, but they do have Dallas, Vegas, Winnipeg, Colorado all up next. So because those are Western Conference teams, they might actually, as crazy as it is to say, they might actually not fully focus on Florida here because they did just beat Florida on the road. And they got teams that are bigger for them coming up next. So I like Florida in this game. And the market is agreeing with that. Florida up from minus 138 to minus 142 on the money line. 54% of the tickets. So the public doesn't even really love Florida at this point. The public seems to be a little bit persuaded by Anaheim's recent hot streak. And Florida not looking that good this year. And Florida being somewhat of an injured team. 90% of the tickets on Florida, 90% of the cash, on Florida, though. So the real money is coming in on Florida. And when you see a line like this, again, you got to take notice because it's like, well, why is a Florida team that's on the road and a 6-5-1 team, why are they like a fairly significant favorite on the road against a 7-3-1 team? Again, the odds makers are telling you what you should think in this game. They're telling you that Anaheim is just a fraud right now, basically. I mean, I know it's early, so it's hard to really say, but I mean, I'm just going based on what Anaheim's talent level is. I mean, you can see some statistics that are involved here that will tell you that Anaheim's not really that good. I know they are good at home, though. They're 3-1-0 at home. Florida hasn't been good on the road, 1-4-0 on the road. So that's a little bit of a concern if you like Florida. They just haven't been good on the road, and Anaheim's been good at home. But the spot looks good for Florida to me for the most part, with some reservations there. And again, it's just one of those misleading lines, man, where it's like, well, the odds makers are not just giving money away here. There's a reason why Florida's a favorite like that. And then the last game on the board is Winnipeg and the LA Kings. Winnipeg off to a strong start at 9-3. They did just beat Pittsburgh. They've had 3 wins in a row. Fairly easy wins, though, against teams that aren't really that good. Although Minnesota took them to overtime. That was the most difficult of those 3 games. And it was on the road. Winnipeg's had a few days off. They're starting a road trip here. I don't know that the couple of days off is really going to kill their momentum. I would guess no. I think they're going to be focused on this because they play San Jose after this. That's not a look ahead. So I think they will be focused to try to kick the road trip off on the right foot. I think they're starting it with still having some momentum here. And Hellebuck didn't play their last game, so he'll be back in net. So they will have their better goalie back in net. LA also hasn't played since Saturday, though, and they've lost 2 games in a row. So you definitely could argue that LA is going to be focused as well. I mean, of course, it's Winnipeg coming into their place. They've lost multiple games in a row. I don't know if it's going to be Kemper in net again for them or not, because he's played 3 games in a row. He is their better goalie, so somebody to keep an eye on there. LA, they got caught by Detroit in a return home spot. That's not that surprising. Again, the return home spot can be a distracted spot, but then they did not turn it around as they lost to New Jersey in the following game. So, yeah, I think it's a spot where both teams are going to show up focused, man. And when that's the case, sometimes you do want to lean towards the better team, which is Winnipeg. But in this case, the money's actually coming in on LA. They're up for -119 and -125. 71% of the tickets on Winnipeg, but only 52% of the cash on Winnipeg. So the odds makers are kind of telling you something. It's like, well, why is LA, the team with the worst record, favored here? Well, again, there's a reason for that, so I would probably just agree with the market, even though sometimes they say if both teams are focused, you want to look to the better team. But in this case, I'll agree with the market instead. There's a reason why the line is where it is. Winnipeg's looking like they're turning into a public road underdog here, which I do not like, obviously. Fading the public with a home favorite tends to be the way you want to look. LA was good at home last year, too, and Winnipeg was not as good on the road. So if those types of things continue, it's another check mark for LA there. Let's go. I don't know. We'll talk about this as the best bet segment, even though I have to get to NBA. I'm gonna have 2 other plays. I already gave out a play on the fly on the Flyers. I'm gonna give out 2 more plays here in hockey. One of them is going to be against my Boston Bruins. I'm going to go with the New York Islanders. Again, we're going to do it in regulation, even though it's dangerous, I know, because the Bruins, last couple of years, they seem to be the overtime kids, and they seem to lose a lot in overtime. So we are a little bit concerned about that, but I wanted to knock this price down on the Islanders, man, because the money line is a little bit too heavy on them. I think it's a bad spot for the Bruins, so we're going to go with the Islanders. I like the Islanders. If you want to mitigate the risk a little bit and do one of those split bets where you're going to wind up putting probably a little bit more than half on the puck line and then the other, like a little bit less than half on the money line, or excuse me, the opposite, right? A little bit more than half on the money line and then a little bit less than half on the puck line. You could do that as well. I'm going to take it down to, you can find it at around -105 in regulation. That's what I'm going to do here in this one. The Islanders look like they're public, which I'm not sure if I buy that because the Bruins have more weight behind their name, and the Bruins have been playing better recently, so I don't really understand the public being that heavy on the Islanders. I don't see why that would be the case. 86% of the tickets, but 92% of the cash, at least for now, on the Islanders. I do worry that they look public right now. The line hasn't moved at all, sitting at -155, so we'll see how the market shapes up, but I'm going to stick with my situational read in this one. The Bruins did draw themselves to 500 after they went on a really, really bad stretch of 6 losses in a row. They've won 4 of 5 since then, but they just beat Carolina at home, man. That was a huge win for the Bruins, beating Carolina. Now they've had multiple days off, but I think the days off could hurt them a little bit because they're on a 3-game win streak. And when you have a 3-game win streak, you don't necessarily want to take time off. Now they have to go play the Islanders on the road, and it's a single-game road trip, and then the Bruins come back home and they face Ottawa. And I think they're going to want Ottawa because Ottawa just totally embarrassed the Bruins 7-2 last time out. And Ottawa is, of course, the team that has a home mark now, so there's that kind of thing going on. The Bruins' former goalie. So for those reasons, I think the Bruins are going to be looking ahead to Ottawa as well. And then they have Toronto twice, and then Ottawa again, and then Montreal, and then Carolina again. So out of all these games coming up, I think this Islanders game is the one that means the least to the Bruins here. And the Bruins just beat the Islanders 5-2 at home with Korpisalo in net. So the Bruins were able to beat the Islanders with their lesser goalie in net. So I just don't really see them totally taking the Islanders seriously here. And I think it's going to be a letdown spot off of that big win over Carolina. So there are a lot of things going for the Islanders situation in this one, which is why I like it. Again, the Islanders are only one, like they're, or one, maybe you want to say a half game below 5 or above 500 because they have one overtime loss. So their record is not that much better than the Bruins. So I don't know why the public is that heavy on the Islanders, if that's even true. People are also going to see, hey, the Islanders already lost to the Bruins and they lost to Carolina really badly. So the Bruins beat Carolina. So you would think that the public would be like, hey, we get the Bruins as an underdog here, and they beat Carolina, who just easily beat the Islanders. So, like, what gives? It looks almost too easy to me to take the Bruins here. Yeah, so obviously I won't be doing that. And for the Islanders, they've won 2 games in a row. They have one fewer day off, but they're staying at home. It's actually the second game of the homestand here, as they actually somehow were able to win against Columbus despite being in a return home spot, coming off a big win over Washington. Bad spot, and the Islanders still won against Columbus, and it was with Rittich in net instead of Sorokin. And Sorokin's their better goalie, or their goalie that they basically play more often at least. So I don't know how the Islanders won that game, to be honest, but that kind of tells you something, that the Islanders were able to win like that with their second-string goalie in a bad spot. So now they're going to be in a game where I think they're going to be focused more because it's a quick revenge spot against the Bruins, because they lost to the Bruins on the road on Tuesday the 28th of October with the Islanders' best goalie in net, Sorokin, against the Bruins' shitty goalie, Korpisalo. So it's like, again, the Bruins, I think, won't take them seriously, but the Islanders, I think, are going to be motivated to win this game. So I think it's going to continue, and it's going to be Sorokin for the Islanders in this one. He'll be back in net, I would imagine, because he didn't play the last game. Bruins may have Swayman in net again here, but I don't care about that. I think the spot lines up pretty nicely for the Islanders here. So we'll go Islanders in regulation. And then to finish it off, we're also going to go with the Carolina Hurricanes on the road at -120. They actually dropped from -130 to -121. I saw it out there at -120, I'm pretty sure. I'll double check that, and I'll put whatever the line is that's the best. I'll put it up there in the show description, but I think this is what it is. 76% of the tickets are on the Rangers. This is against the New York Rangers. This kind of surprises me, though, that the Rangers would be this public all of a sudden. 74% of the cash, though, coming in on Carolina, so the money seems to be agreeing with the Carolina side here. I like it as well. I don't understand the public percentage being on the Rangers. Like, I wouldn't expect the Rangers to be public here. I just like the spot. So that seems a little weird to me, but okay by me if we get a cash percentage that's completely the opposite of where the public is. By the way, I forgot to mention Bruins and Islanders. The Bruins have been really bad on the road. They're 1-4 on the road, and the Islanders are 4-2 at home. So that's also a good sign for the Islanders. The Islanders have been better at home, and the Bruins have been significantly worse on the road. So that's better as well. So another thing we have going for us in that game. But back to Carolina and the Rangers here. Carolina, they just lost in Boston, like I said. Could be in a little bit of a bounce-back spot here. They've lost 3 of 4, but they lost to Dallas and Vegas. Those are obviously losses that are not embarrassing. I mean, those are 2 good teams. They were playing Vegas on the road after losing in a shootout to Colorado, or winning, in a shootout against Colorado 2 days prior on the road too. And Vegas had Bussy in net in that one, their backup goalies, so you can't really blame them for that loss at all. Dallas is a good team. And then in a return home spot from a long road trip, they lost to Vegas. Can't really blame them for that either. They righted the ship with a win over the Islanders. But then they went out on the road again and they lost to Boston. Bruins played well in that game. Now Carolina's got multiple days off. I imagine their better goalie, Anderson, is going to be in net again for this one because they've had multiple days off, so he'll be rested. He only played one game prior to that, so I think he'll be in net again here. They're going to want to split the road trip because it's only a 2-game road trip. They're only going from Boston to New York. Not a lot of travel here. Coming off that loss to Boston, they don't have anything big upcoming, so I think they're going to be focused for this game against the Rangers. The Rangers have started playing better. They're above 500 now. Maybe that's why the public is somewhat on the Rangers, because they've won 3 games in a row, on the road no less. But they beat Vancouver, who's, I think, overrated right now. I mean, they're a mediocre team. Their big win was the one in overtime against Edmonton. That was a big win. And then I chose to fade them in the spot after that, which I thought was a big letdown spot against Seattle with this Carolina game upcoming. But they were able to win anyway in overtime, and they actually outplayed Seattle in the game, so I got that one wrong. Now the Rangers are returning home from a road trip, though. Yeah, they've had a couple extra days off, but they went all the way to the Pacific Northwest, Western Canada. They've been on the road for over a week. I think this is a bad spot, even though, yes, they're going to be focused because it is Carolina. I mean, you got to think they're at least going to try to win this game, but they do have to go out on the road again after this. So if they have stuff to do at home, they have to get it done now. I think it's a little bit of a bad spot here for the Rangers, man. Those distractions could still come into play here, even if you are facing a good team. Carolina is the better team, as the odds makers are telling you, and I think when you have a setup like that, you do want to look towards the better team as well. So that's what we're doing here. And looking at the home-road dichotomy here, Carolina's been decent on the road, 4-3 away from home. And the Rangers, as we know, they haven't even won at home. The Rangers have been atrocious at home. 0-4-1 at home for the Rangers. They've been awful at home. So we're going to continue with that sentiment. In the first 3 home games, the Rangers didn't even score a goal. And then since then, yeah, they only scored 1 goal in their first 4 home games. Then they finally put up a bunch of goals at home against San Jose and still lost the game. And since then, they haven't played at home again. So, yeah, they've lost every game at home, and they've only scored 6 goals total at home, with 5 of them being in 1 game against San Jose in a loss. And that's in 5 home games. They've only scored 6 goals. I mean, that is pathetic. Yes, I know their offense finally showed up against one of the worst teams in hockey, San Jose, but Carolina is way, way better than the Sharks and way better defensively, too. So Rangers probably not going to be putting up 5 goals this time. Carolina will be the play in that one. All right, let's go to NBA. This is going to be a long-ish video. Shit. NBA, there aren't too many games today, though, and then we'll do college football quickly. My play is going to be on Bucks Raptors, so I'm going to wait on that one. I like that spot in that game, so I'm going to hold off for a minute. Orlando and Atlanta, somewhat of an interesting one. I don't know if there's a playoff revenge angle here. I think there is, actually. Let me see. Last year, postseason. Orlando got knocked out by Boston. But, yeah, the play-in game, that's right. So, Atlanta, debatably, that's playoff revenge because Orlando embarrassed Atlanta in the play-in game last year to get into the actual playoffs. Although, actually, Orlando did already play Atlanta, so Atlanta actually already got their revenge this year on October 24th. Atlanta was able to beat Orlando at home. So I guess maybe the revenge angle actually might shift to Orlando a little bit here. Orlando looks like maybe they're starting to figure some things out. A couple wins in a row, although they were only against Charlotte and Washington, so those are bad teams. But they were blowout wins, so Orlando does seem to be kind of getting the swing of things, and Orlando is still a better team than what the record suggests. I don't think they're going to overlook Atlanta here, even though Orlando does have Boston next, and that is definitely playoff revenge. Orlando's going to want to beat that Boston team that eliminated them last year. But Orlando lost to Atlanta earlier this year, so I don't think they're necessarily going to overlook Atlanta. Atlanta at 3-4 right now. Atlanta did just have a difficult loss to Cleveland, and they're returning home from a road trip. So the spot is not very good for Atlanta. Again, the road trip return spot typically tends to be a spot where you don't show up totally focused. Even though it is Orlando, they did already beat Orlando once on the road, so it's actually also road revenge for Orlando. Atlanta coming off that tough game to finish the road trip at Cleveland, man, where Atlanta was in that game late in the game. The game was pretty close. It was actually tied with 8 minutes to go, and Atlanta was still within 1 or 2 scores. They were within 1 score with 4.5 minutes left, so Atlanta played a tough game. at Cleveland, and they're coming off that. I think the spot does set up better for the Magic here, but the money's coming in on the Hawks, which I just don't understand. I don't really agree with that. The Magic initially went from a 3-point favorite to a 3.5-point favorite. And the fact that they're a road favorite is the odds makers telling you something, too. They're telling you the Magic are actually the better of these two teams, such that they're actually a road favorite. 62% of the tickets on the Magic, 64% of the cash on the Hawks. I can't really agree with that one. I mean, I would slightly lean to Orlando in that one. Philadelphia at Chicago, which is Jeffrey's heart against Jeffrey's money, I think is what this game is, right? Because he's a Philly fan, but he's fading them with the Bulls here. Philly's coming off that win over Brooklyn, where I thought they were in a bad spot, and Philly still beat Brooklyn, which obviously I don't love that. That was a bad call by me on Brooklyn. I don't think we could really say it was that much of an outlier. I mean, Philly did shoot pretty well. Well, maybe it was. I mean, Philly shot pretty well in that game, 52.1% from the field. Brooklyn was just atrocious from three-point range, 18.4%. So, yeah, I guess you could say it was a little bit misleading. It was a bit of an outlier there. And Philly really had a good fourth quarter. Like, Brooklyn was in position to cover that game until the fourth quarter. So, I guess there were some things about that were misleading. Philadelphia off to a 5-1 start, which they face a not that difficult of a schedule so far. Their two difficult games so far were both against Boston, and they probably should have lost both games. They were behind by double digits pretty late in both games. They won one and lost the other. Now they're going to Chicago. They do have Cleveland on deck tomorrow, so you could debate that that's a look ahead, but I don't really know that they're going to necessarily overlook Chicago, because Chicago's 5-1. And also in the Eastern Conference. Chicago's coming up that loss to the Knicks, and I don't really see it being a bounce back spot for the Bulls, because that was a big game against the Knicks, and they took their first loss of the season, and this is something I talk about. When a team takes their first loss of the season, it can have a hangover effect into the next game. Yes, it's Philly. Yes, Philly's 5-1. But they do have Milwaukee and Cleveland coming up next, going into the weekend. And are they going to consider those to be bigger games? Maybe, because again, I mean, those are Milwaukee's in their division. I think Cleveland might be as well. I think those might be considered to be actually bigger games than the Philadelphia one. I don't know, man. I see this being a bit of a hangover spot here. The Bulls, I mean, they haven't faced that difficult of a schedule either, which I was harping on with those Knicks games there. Their most difficult games were the two games against the Knicks. So other than that, their most difficult game was against Detroit, and they kind of caught Detroit, maybe napping a little bit, and Detroit being a little bit overvalued after what they did last year coming into the season. I'm going to lead to Philadelphia in this game. Not a strong opinion. Bulls are a 1-point favorite, which is also somewhat interesting. The Bulls don't even get full home court here. So the odds makers are telling you that the 76ers are actually the better of these two teams here, even though the public might seem to think otherwise. We have 57% of the tickets on the 76ers, though, but 79% of the cash. It looks like the real money, based on the numbers that I'm seeing here, is coming in on Philly in that game. I'll agree with that. I think the spot is a little bit better for them, but obviously I would not want to have my money on that. Charlotte and the New Orleans Pelicans. Charlotte's coming off that win over Utah. I mean, not really impressive to beat Utah, especially when Utah's on the road. Utah's not very good. Now Charlotte's starting a road trip, although they do have momentum now. They ended a loss streak with that win over Utah, so they got some positive momentum here. Are they going to overlook New Orleans because they got a revenge game against Miami coming up, and Miami's the better of the two teams right now? Maybe. Because Charlotte got totally embarrassed the last time they played Miami. So it is possible maybe they overlooked them, but you could argue that they're going to start the road trip with some focus as well. So I don't know. New Orleans is 0-6. They faced a really, really difficult schedule, though. New Orleans, they're not as bad as this. Like, they're definitely not the worst team in the NBA. I think they're actually, like, kind of more of a mediocre team, but they've had an unbelievably difficult schedule. Like, 4 of their 6 games have been road games, and they've played Memphis, San Antonio, Boston, Denver, LA, the Clippers, not the Lakers, but still, the Clippers aren't that bad, and then Oklahoma City. This has not been an easy an easy ride so far for the Pelicans. And Zion Williamson has kind of been in and out of the lineup. He's been a little bit hurt. They're returning home from a road trip, which is a little bit difficult. They've been away since last Wednesday. So it is possible maybe they overlook Charlotte, especially if they have to go back out on the road tomorrow to Dallas. So it's kind of a bad spot for New Orleans too. They might overlook Charlotte here. Interestingly, the money is all coming in on the Pelicans, though. They're up from -1 to -1.5 to -3 here. 50% of the tickets evenly split. 74% of the cash on the Pelicans. And the one thing that you really have to be aware of here is you have an 0-6 Pelican team that's actually a favorite of more than home court against a 3-4 Charlotte team. So it's like, well, why are the odds makers doing that? Well, the odds makers are telling you New Orleans is not as bad as they look. Like, again, they've had probably the most difficult schedule to this point in the entire NBA. So they're not as bad as they look. Charlotte's certainly not a great team. And the odds makers are telling you New Orleans is actually the better of the two teams because NBA doesn't have huge home court advantage, like probably 1.5 maybe for home court. So odds makers are telling you something with that line. So I wouldn't necessarily want to fade that idea, even though I don't love the spot really for New Orleans. The money is saying New Orleans here. I might have to slightly lean that way for that reason, but I don't love it. Phoenix at Golden State. Golden State's a double-digit favorite here. Phoenix, they're coming off blasting San Antonio, and they ended San Antonio's undefeated run to start the season. Big win for Phoenix. Now they have a single game where they have to go out over to Golden State. Could be a bit of a letdown spot, although usually I know it's Golden State. You don't think that a team is going to not be focused for Golden State, but Phoenix is in a spot where they're going to have to continue having this effort like this 2 games in a row against 2 good teams with travel. That does make this a little bit difficult. Golden State, I mean, yeah, they're the better of these two teams, fairly significantly so. Golden State just lost 2 games on the road. It does mean they're returning home from a road trip, although they're only on the road for 2 games, Thursday and Saturday, so it's not really one of those long road trip returns where they're going to be like seriously distracted. They do have to go back out on the road after this. After what Phoenix just did to San Antonio, maybe Golden State will show up, especially because Golden State lost their last 2 games, including to winless Indiana, I'm pretty sure. So you might see Golden State bounce back in this one. Golden State is taking the money, it looks like. They're up from 10 to 11 here. They're a huge favorite. 75% of the tickets, 85% of the cash coming in on them. I would not really disagree with that. I would somewhat agree with that, with laying the points with the Warriors. Don't necessarily love the spot for either team, but at the very least, the Warriors could be in a little bit of a bounce back spot, and it could be a bit of a letdown spot for Phoenix there, or at least a spot where there's a bit of a hangover where they have to try to put in a huge effort 2 games in a row. And then we do have Oklahoma City going to the Clippers. Oklahoma City picking up right where they left off last year. They've won all 7 games so far this year. They face kind of a moderately difficult schedule, not the most difficult schedule so far. Have to go back out on the road now. They haven't been on the road since October 27th, but they have momentum right now. So going out on the road with momentum, sometimes you will be focused to start the road trip, and they don't really have huge opponents coming up on this road trip, so they may very well still be focused here. Clippers did just lose on Monday, yesterday to Miami, so the Clippers are on a back-to-back, which isn't that great. And Miami, I think, is a team that they did show up for. I mean, they only lost that game by 1 point. Although the Clippers, I assume, were a favorite, right? Yeah, they were a 7.5-point favorite. So I guess maybe you could argue the Clippers will be in a bounce-back spot here because they lost as a big favorite. But they're on a back-to-back. And if you look at that box score, the Clippers played their best players for their full workload. Like Kawhi Leonard, James Harden, they both got over 30 minutes in that game. So they played a full workload. So this team could be a little bit tired, although they didn't play for a while before that Monday game. They hadn't played since Friday, so I guess that might help alleviate that fatigue factor a little bit. Obviously, I don't want to get involved in this game at all. The money is coming in towards the Clippers, though. Thunder up from 5.5 to 7, which is a pretty big line for a road favorite, even though I know it is the best team in the NBA, the Thunder. And Clippers are kind of a mediocre team. 64% of the tickets on the Thunder, 72% of the cash coming in on the Clippers, though. And the Clippers still are good in this arena at home. All 3 of their wins have come at home, and they're 3-1 at home. So even though it's a back-to-back, I won't totally disagree with the money on that one on the Clippers, but not my favorite, obviously. Not even close. My favorite is the remaining game, and we're going to lay the points with the Toronto Raptors against the Bucks. Raptors are up from a 3-point favorite to a 4.5-point favorite. So the money looks like it's already coming in on the Raptors. I know we lost a little bit of value here, but I'm going to do it anyway. Bucks, 65% of the tickets on them. The Bucks are obviously going to be public. I mean, the Bucks, they got the star power. They got Giannis, whatever. The public sees them as an underdog. They basically can't even name a player on the Raptors, probably. They know that the Bucks have been the way better team over the last few years. Public is going to think that there's a lot of value here getting the Bucks as an underdog, but 72% of the cash on the Raptors. There's a reason why the Raptors are favored here, man. The odds makers are telling you something with this line. Bucks 5-2, Toronto only 3-4. Interestingly, the odds makers have actually been giving Toronto respect this year, so they actually think Toronto is a little bit better this year and kind of on the way up, it seems. I know Milwaukee's a little bit better on the road, 2-1. I mean, they're fine on the road. Toronto hasn't been that great at home yet, 1-2. But I still think it's a difficult spot for teams to have to travel to Toronto. You got to go through customs, go up to Canada there. Milwaukee's coming off a big win over Indiana yesterday. And the reason why that was big, even though Indiana, I think, was only a one-win team, and they started out the season winless. Indiana, very injury-riddled team. Milwaukee barely got by them, too. But that was a big win, even though Milwaukee didn't cover. So sometimes when a team doesn't cover, sometimes you want to look to them to focus in the next game. But I don't think so here, because the reason why I faded Milwaukee against Sacramento on Saturday was not only because they were coming off multiple big games in a row, but because they had that Indiana game coming up, and that was playoff revenge. Indiana knocked Milwaukee out of the playoffs, I think, the last 2 years in a row. So Milwaukee, they showed up for that game. They wanted to win. They got the win. Now they got to go to Toronto with no time off. They have to travel through customs to Toronto, where, by the way, Milwaukee already beat them once back on October 24th. So Toronto, I think, is going to be the team to make the adjustments this time. And by the way, in that game, Toronto, yeah, I know they're only a 2.5-point favorite, but it was still weird that they were a favorite in that game. Yeah, I know they're now a 4.5-point favorite, so the odds makers are adjusting a little bit for the zigzag. So I know maybe we're not getting total value on the line here, but I just love the spot, dude. So that's what we're going to do in this one. Milwaukee also had a really good shooting game in that one, 52.2% from the field, although Toronto did shoot well from three in the game, 40.7%. So it wasn't really a huge outlier or anything like that. But I do think that might cause Milwaukee to just overlook Toronto this time. Like, there are many reasons. I mean, again, it's a back-to-back, although the back-to-back is also factoring into the line a little bit, the lack of rest scenario there, and the fact they're playing a third game in 4 days, all in different cities. So the rest spot's not good. I think they're in a letdown spot. It's a revenge spot, quick revenge spot for Toronto, and Toronto will make the adjustments, I think, after losing that first game, and Milwaukee probably won't take them as seriously. And then Milwaukee does have to play Chicago next. And the way Chicago has started, I think that's a bigger game for Milwaukee. I think they might look ahead to that. Then they do have Houston, Dallas after that, whatever. But, yeah, I think it's a sandwich spot. I don't like how it sets up at all for Milwaukee here. Toronto is staying at home, and they have a day off. So they were off yesterday. Surprisingly, they won after they upset Cleveland and then returned home from that. I thought they were in a letdown spot, and they still beat Memphis. So that kind of tells you something, that Toronto beat Memphis. Even though they were in a bad spot, I thought basically a sandwich spot. Because I think they're going to show up with the Bucks coming into town, especially when the Bucks just beat them at home. But the fact that Toronto didn't do poorly in what was a bad spot for them, I think that's a good sign. And that just might continue giving them their momentum here. They got the 1 day of rest, which Milwaukee doesn't have. Milwaukee's traveling, which Toronto is not. So a lot of reasons why this sets up a lot better for Toronto. Yes, some of it's being factored into the line, but I can't help myself. We're still going to do it. There's no injury here, by the way. That line just is what it is, even though Giannis is not injured or anything like that. Even though he's been kind of a game-time decision in like every game. He's not even listed on the injury report this time. So Raptors minus the points. Nate, what's up, man? Thanks for hanging out. All right, and then we got college football to finish this off, and then that'll be the end of the show. College football is only the MAC now. The MACtion for Tuesday is starting with two just horrendous games, dude. I mean, I'll start with the uglier of the two, UMass at Akron. This game is so bad, dude. And UMass is so bad that it looks like they're going to drop back out of Division I, even though they just joined Division I a few years ago. Akron's not even a good team, and Akron is up from 9.5 to 10 here. That's how bad UMass is. UMass is probably the worst team in all of Division I. I mean, that's crazy. 89% of the tickets, 96% of the cash on Akron. They're public, though, although it looks like the money's kind of coming in on them right now, but I would actually probably lean to taking the points with UMass, man. I mean, when you have a team that's winless like this, I mean, you got to think they got to keep trying. I mean, they've had some decent performances recently, but I think people are going to see, oh, UMass lost at home to Buffalo, and as we'll see, Akron, I believe, just beat Buffalo in their last game. So that makes it look even easier to lay the points with Akron than it already does against an 0-8 team. But, oh, yeah, the common opponent they just had, UMass lost at home to Buffalo. And I think Akron actually went into Buffalo and beat them, which I'll look at that in a minute. But, yeah, like, so that transitive thing, if Akron could beat Buffalo and Buffalo beat UMass, of course Akron's going to beat UMass easily. That's what the people are going to think. Both these teams last played on Saturday, October 25th, so the amount of rest is the same. UMass, I mean, they got embarrassed against Central Michigan that last time out. I mean, it's been an embarrassing season for them. I think you got to think they're going to keep showing up, though, because you got to try to get a win, man. I mean, I think that just keeps the team motivated. It's just totally embarrassing to not have a win on the entire season. And as I said, Akron actually just went into Buffalo and pulled off the upset against Buffalo. And they were a 10.5-point underdog in that game, and they beat Buffalo. Crazy win, big win. Although Buffalo outgained Akron in the game. I mean, Akron still stinks. Buffalo's actually one of the better teams in the MAC, and their record just doesn't really show it right now. Although Buffalo, I don't know. We'll see if Buffalo can still make the MAC championship. I don't know if they can, but the reason why Buffalo lost this game, I mean, they outgained Akron in the game, probably should have won the game, but they had 5 turnovers in the game. Akron themselves had 3, but still, Buffalo 5 turnovers. They were -2 in turnovers. That's one of the main reasons they lost that game, so it was a little bit misleading. Akron doesn't have anything big up next, though. They have Kent State up next, which is not a big game, obviously. Yeah, Akron, they're not really going anywhere this year, so that was a big game against Buffalo. Like, I don't think Akron, they don't have any chance of making the MAC title game. They have a chance at making a bowl if they can win 3 games, though, which actually is possible because they're going to be a big favorite. I mean, they are a big favorite against UMass. They're going to be a big favorite again against Kent State, who is pretty bad. And then they would have to win on the road against Bowling Green, but Bowling Green hasn't been that good either. So I guess it is possible they show up just because there's that chance that maybe they will actually win their last 3 games and get to a bowl. I don't know. That's at 7 p.m. on CBS Sports. If anybody wants to watch such a horrendous game. Zach, what's up, man? Thanks for hanging out. And then to finish it off, the Battle of Ohio. This is actually a pretty good game. Miami, Ohio, and Ohio. They're 2 of the better teams in the MAC. It's a rivalry game between 2 Ohio schools. These teams do not like each other. It is a revenge spot for, I believe, Miami, Ohio, if I'm not mistaken. I believe Ohio beat Miami, Ohio in the MAC championship. So, yeah, Ohio lost to Miami, Ohio on the road during the regular season last year. Then Ohio totally embarrassed Miami, Ohio in the MAC championship last year, 38-3. So it is going to be a little bit of revenge here on the part of Miami, Ohio. So there is a motivating factor there for Miami, Ohio. Miami, Ohio has won 5 games in a row after they started 0-3, which were all out-of-conference games, which they weren't really expected to win. But since they've started in the MAC, they've played well. They haven't really played any of the best MAC teams yet, though, so they're stepping up in class this time. Ohio and Toledo and Buffalo, those are probably like those teams in Miami, Ohio are probably the top 4 teams in this conference. So Miami, Ohio hasn't been tested yet, really. They haven't faced any of the better teams in this conference. They've been all right. I mean, they do have momentum here. They also last played on Saturday, October 25th. Coming into this game, they're coming in on a roll, though, so maybe that extra time off will maybe hurt them a little bit because they're on a nice run of 5 straight wins. So when that's the case, you don't really want to have your schedule shifted. But I still think they're going to show up focused just because of what happened last year. Both these teams, I think, have the same records, too. Well, Miami, Ohio's 3-0 in conference. Ohio's 3-1 in conference, and they're both 5-3 overall. Ohio, you could argue, is in kind of the same momentum-killing spot because they have won 4 of their last 5, including their last 2. And they last played on Saturday, October 25th as well. They barely got by Eastern Michigan on the road. Eastern Michigan, not that great. That's where our Noah Kaniga is on that team. Both teams are going to show up for this. I just think maybe a little bit of extra motivation on the Miami, Ohio side. Teams with similar records, similar scheduling spot doesn't really have me leaning one way or the other here. So I think the revenge spot is really the kind of the determining factor here. Ohio's down from a 3.5-point favorite to a 2.5-point favorite. 64% of the tickets and 87% of the cash on Miami, Ohio. So the money is somewhat coming in on Miami, Ohio here. Ohio, they also haven't really faced any great teams in the MAC so far. So that's kind of a wash as well. They did get one win against a big conference team with West Virginia, but West Virginia is not very good, and they were in a bad spot there. It's still a pretty good win for Ohio, but yeah, maybe the public will be a little bit more on Ohio for that reason. And Ohio actually took Rutgers to the limit as well. Rutgers not a good team, but still a Big Ten team. But anyway, I do think I would agree with the money still with Miami, Ohio in the pretty major revenge scenario there. Those are my thoughts, man. And then the totals are low in both games. They're both sitting at 49.5. Money looks like it's more so coming in on the under in this Miami, Ohio and Ohio game, which somewhat makes sense to me because it could be more of a like playoff style atmosphere because these teams don't like each other. They're probably going to be focused defensively. The defenses have had some rest, which might help the defenses as well. The money seems to be coming in slightly on the over in the other game, UMass Akron, for what that's worth. I mean, I don't know about that. I mean, those teams, they're just bad both offensively and defensively. So, yeah, I mean, I do think my stronger opinion, though, probably is towards UMass, though, just because Akron's in that letdown spot. That's probably my stronger opinion in those two games is UMass plus the 10, but oh, God, that seems ugly. But, of course, I'm not going to do that. I mean, I'm not going to give out a play on that. I'm not that much of a masochist. I'm not insane. Anyway, that's going to do it. Thanks for hanging out, guys. The bets one more time today. NBA, Toronto Raptors lay the points. Hockey, we're going to take a shot on the money line with the Flyers. Carolina Hurricanes money line as well. And Islanders on the 60-minute line to win in regulation. Or if you want to do the split bet where you make your own -1 puck line or whatever so it pushes. If they win by 1, even in overtime, you can do that too. That's going to do it for today, man. We'll continue to be back. We'll start getting involved in college basketball pretty soon once we have situations show up. Most likely it'll be in a team's second game of the season is when we're going to start doing that. But we will see. Yeah, and all the other sports are continuing, of course. So we'll continue to do all of those. And NFL will be back in a couple of days as well, obviously. So we'll keep doing that. I like a few NFL games this week, by the way. So I have to kind of narrow it down, man, because there are actually like 5 games that in the NFL this week that might be plays for me, and I don't believe one of them is the Thursday game. I actually like both other primetime games, though, the Sunday night and Monday night. I actually like both of those games this week, so you can stay tuned for that as well. I'll be back. I appreciate it, guys. Thanks for hanging out. Hopefully you guys lasted for this video. I mean, it's about the length that I expected today. That's what she said. Learn to Toad on Twitter. Learn to Toad on Instagram. You can check me out there. You can get my content there, of course. Covered in Uke is my Uke channel on YouTube, so you can check that out. Of course, like and subscribe, and leave me some comments here, man. Let's boost this YouTube channel. Let's boost it up. We might be changing it to Toadstool Sports pretty soon, so maybe stay tuned for that. I got to get the thumbnails better, man. It's just a lot of work because I have to create the audio out of this, upload it to the audio platforms. Got to do a lot. So, and it's for almost no money. So it's for the love of the game, baby. Pun intended. But yes, I'm on audio, so give me a good review over there. I reduced the amount of ads on the audio as well, so hopefully that helps you guys out. If you listen on audio, it does help me out, and leaving me a good review helps me out there too on Spotify and iTunes, and patreon.com/learntotode, and you can get some bonus Uke content there. You get a Spotify feed, and you get prioritized requests. That's going to do it. I appreciate it, guys. Thanks for hanging out. Peace for now.